What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Show and Tell After Dark, where we talk about all things art, all things music, all things Boston. This episode will be our culture shock episode. My name is Cricket. I am one of the hosts. I am 30 for references. What generation is that? Generation Z? Oh, I'm a millennial. So let's go around and say our name and our generation.
Ooh, I'm Tata. I'm Gen Y.
I'm most generous, and I am Gen Y as well. I am 27.
How's it going? I'm Nate Nix. I'm part of Gen Z.
My turn.
St. E's 99, Gen Y.
Rob the 508 God, 23. So I guess that's Gen Z, right?
Yeah, what? That nigga just said Gen Y.
Gen Y?
Is he?
Oh, you a fraud.
Gen Z.
I don't think you need to grab the mic just to say that.
That's cultural appropriation.
My name is Valerie, and I'm a boomer.
Can I respectfully ask, like, how far back that is from Gen Y?
You don't really need to know.
No, okay, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to know what the scale looked like.
Don't sweat the scale. It's all right. We'll talk later.
So I'm Latamara Smith. I'm 55, so I'm Generation X.
I'm Aline Lopes, and I'm 39. I'm a millennial.
Hi, I'm Angie Lee, and I'm Generation X. I'm 47 years old, soon to be 48.
All right.
J-Pan, boomer.
On that. You asking too many questions.
Wait, what year were you born?
We gonna figure out the scale.
Hey,
My mom
don't
was born
worry
in
about
1956.
sweetheart. Don't worry about it.
60. Okay, all
All right.
That's why I asked. My mom was born in 56. I was like,
All
that's
right.
hard.
So for the first question, I would like to ask from this side. So Jay, how is it like growing up at during your time?
How was it like growing up? Well, I grew up right when Boston had a bunch of problems racially. I was lucky enough to have my parents, that mother and father, took me and my sisters out of here in the 60s. Unbelievably. And both of them graduated from college. They moved us down to Plymouth. Okay, it was all white down there. And it was a beautiful area. And so we were like sheltered away from all of the stuff in the city. And we used to come back and visit my family on the weekends all the time in Roxbury. So actually, as a kid, it was kind of great for me because I had a perfect childhood. Never was hungry, had two parents. I grew up differently from almost everybody that I know. And so I was very, very lucky. My father was incredible because he used to sell encyclopedias for a living down there. And he used to walk door to door. I don't know how he did it. And knock on all the white people's doors and say, "Hey, would you like to buy encyclopedia?" Which
Like
is
Jehovah's
basically
Witness.
the Google of the day. Okay, because an encyclopedia had everything that Google has, but it's in a book.
It's way more inconvenient.
Oh, way more. Yeah. So, and what's crazy is he became the top seller for World Book down there. And I don't know how he did, but that's what he did. So me and my three sisters, we grew up down there and visited the hood. That's what we used to do, visit the hood. And I used to look out the window and go, "Look at all the black people."
Like, gross.
Yeah, and I was like, no. I was like, look at all the beautiful black people. Down there, I had to represent the black people for my race. I mean, I could show you a picture, but it was just me. There was me and my three sisters. Everybody else in my school from age 2 to 8 to 12 was all white. all of us. So it was kind of crazy. But
I think
how was it growing up? It was great, but it was.
But how do you think that's different than like kind of like when we talk about like these Gen Zs? Like how do you think that's different than that?
Damn, why you say it like that?
These dirty Gen Zs.
No,
I'm
well,
sorry.
the thing is, I think the new generation, the morals are kind of like gone. A lot of the morals are like gone.
Y'all gonna take that?
You guys can take that?
No, I'm just saying morally.
That's just in Brockton.
No.
Why we catching straight shots like that?
Well, no, but I mean, as far as morals go, it has to. But it's it's not nobody's. Well, I mean, I ain't gonna say whose fault it is and all that, but it's like it's hard to grow up if you don't have the people that you can see like your heroes, and if you see a lot of negativity, then you follow the negativity. That's all.
I see what's happening here.
But that's not everybody. All right. But it was great. I grew up great. So next.
Now, but I do want to ask, what morals are you speaking on?
Wait.
It's because they didn't have the OnlyFans back then. That's what you're talking about.
We didn't have any social media at all back in the 80s and 90s. No, we did not. So we grew up different. As for me, I grew up in a multicultural family. I mean, we're all mixed up. I'm not whole of anything. As a matter of fact, my mother and grandmother, I grew up in a house full of women, no men. All my aunts and uncles were off in different parts of the United States and stuff like that. But growing up multicultural kind of, okay, how can I say this? Like, my black side didn't understand what I was back in the 80s. They didn't understand. So I got beat up after school a lot. Yeah, I did. I got jumped a lot after school because they didn't understand what I was. You know what I mean? Even I didn't know what I was even as a little kid. Until my mother and grandmother taught me, about my culture, that all my cultures. And the white side of my family, they were nice, but I would be the blunt of everybody's joke behind my back. That's why I respect my black side more than my white side, because the black side told me what was up, that they didn't like the fact of what I was, and I respected them for that. You know what I mean? But then I found out that I have other cultures in me. Like I got Chinese, Irish, Italian, Black, Cape Verdean. All that is mixed up into me. Yeah, all that is mixed up into me. And growing up in the 80s, I had a fun childhood. I can actually say I had a really fun childhood with my sisters, all three of them. My sister Dee Dee, Rachel, and Kelly. Like, we lived a pretty decent life. But I grew up in Dorchester, when Dorchester was out of control. Yeah, it was out of control. I mean, I lost like 17 friends in the early 90s. Like from 1991 to 1992, I lost 17 friends, 17 of them. Like, and I couldn't, I after the fifth funeral, I just couldn't bring myself to go to any anymore because it was depressing the heck out of me. I gave my condolences and stuff like that, but it became too much. It's like violence was worse, in my opinion, in the 80s and the 90s. At least that's what I think. Violence is still violence here in Boston, still, but it wasn't as bad as it was in the 90s. And
Can I ask that
my
question?
God, yes.
Can I ask that question to you guys? Do you think that like violence isn't that bad in Boston for like your guys' group? Because I know like for me, in Mattapan, right where I live, a 13-year-old was just shot and killed. But that's still like, what's the quantity of violence and stuff like that? Like, is it as violent as it was back in the day?
I think it depends on what you mean by like violence, because I think that then like violence was a lot more like overt, if you will, and like today, like violence like manifests itself in so many different ways. Especially when you think about like interpersonal violence, like you think about domestic violence, you think about violence like intergender violence, and as well as like social media as well. Like people are just coming for each other all the time. There's always like a level of like attack on each other, and I think in Boston in particular, the way that young people utilize like social media now as like a means of like getting a drop on people and like attacking people there, things are bad, and you feel me. So I wouldn't say it's like worse or better. It's just different. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it is different. It is different.
I was gonna say I think it's just very different. I think that in the '90s, for me, anyways, even though you could be the most innocent person, even though it still happens today, there's still people getting shot by just being in the wrong place. But we dealt a lot with drive-bys. Like I have stories. I grew up in Codman Park in Academy Homes. I was born in Cape Verde. I came here when I was 10 and dealt with a lot of the things that you guys are talking about. Thesauruses, I love them. I used to have, we used to have a whole set. They were like God sent back then, but we did grow up differently. But I think that in terms of the violence, it's definitely, it feels more targeted now. But I feel like they almost are more courageous than we were. Even though it felt like we were doing drive-bys, but they're more courageous because a lot of women die now. And women died back then too, but more by accident. Where a lot of women are dying
to make a proof.
Intentional, and a lot of times because of their own involvement. Whereas back in the day, a lot of women were involved, but they weren't targeted. So I feel like the boldness is different. Whereas, so to us, it feels like there's no respect.
They have no morals.
But I think that could be argued differently as well because they care about things that we didn't care about as well. They're more exposed to things that we weren't exposed about to. Like at the age, my daughter is 16 years old. I was not working on the things that she was working on. Yeah, I was a tutor, and then I worked at D'Angelo's, and I cared, and I always was like the mom of the group. But I didn't have the outlets that she has. I didn't have the information that she has. I also wasn't in the medical program, so I didn't face racism as much as she did. But I did still go to West Roxbury. I did face it on some level, but I didn't know how to deal with it, where she does know how to deal with it. So I think that we do have to give them props that, yes, and I think that it comes to that, talks about boldness. They just live in a very different way in every way. So when they're being violent, they're violent in a different way. When they're being awesome and amazing and just moving the world forward, they're doing that as well. And then they're doing stupid shit that we're like I want to choke you every day. But
Can I ask you, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna say it's kind of like hard to get a gauge on, if the violence is different now than it was before, because even then, like, actual violence versus like what's perceived, because now we have more access to news articles and stuff that's popping up on our feed, and a lot of times we're kind of like desensitized from a lot of things too. And even like in the direction of, for music, for example, like I feel like it's been more glorified, and a lot of people, like, you think there's more violence, but are they kind of just telling stories? Is this real? Like I can't gauge it based off of what I see. But from what's like shown and what appears in the media, you would think there's more. Just because of what you're privy to, there's a lot more than before. Maybe when the only thing you had access to is like the newspaper, whatever they show on TV, and like what's really happening in front of you. But now you're just exposed to all of it, and I don't know, you see so much of it that it doesn't even faze you like that anymore as much.
And I want to add on to that, if you don't mind. There was a time when we would watch movies and everything was a fantasy and was make-believe. And, when someone would die, you knew that he was still, alive. So it's almost like you've heard the saying, art imitates life, life imitates art. Is that we're watching all this information, the violence and social media. Everyone's trying to stand up to these images that they see. And in actuality, you can't, because there's a lot of money, information. You can't dress like the rappers that you see. And as I have a 13-year-old, now 14, and he dresses, he wants, Mom, can you send me this belt, this, that, I need this sweatshirt, I need
Some
this,
Gucci.
and I need this. Yeah, all that, the Gucci and everything. And I said, son, well, who are you trying to be? Oh, no, nobody, Mom. I said, no, you're looking at someone.
Yeah.
Who are you trying to be like? So when he told me it was some Nell Chopper, I think.
NLE Chopper.
Chanel chocolate. Okay.
I don't even know who that is.
Well, see, when I asked my son, because I have to stay current, because I am 55 and I had my son at an older age because I chose to do that because I had bigger things for my life that I wanted to do before I had kids. So I was into music, and I'm a New Edition Candy girl. I did videos, and I was in a group called Picture Perfect and things like that. I don't want to get off the subject right now, but I just want to get back to my son. And so as he tells me who he likes, I as a mother wanted to go and see so that I can relate to him. Because what it is that we get to the point that we kick our kids out at 18. Who does that? Like, that's stupid. Like, why do we kick our children out?
So they can learn.
You know, but
Still your moms?
but we're family. You know, you got the support. And, you know, for myself, I left Boston and I went to California because I wanted bigger and better for myself. And to come back now after being gone for 25 years, it's a culture shock for me. I'm like, where do I fit in? Trying to
What year
find
did you come
my
back?
tribe, you know?
What year did you come back to Boston?
I came back in 2019.
Oh, okay, so that's
and
a
then
very
the pandemic,
recent.
the 2 years, so I can't count that. So now I'm here, and
That's
I'm like,
chips.
well, people say, why you come back here? Because I was already.
Who said that?
Just anybody that I talk to.
He's hating, bro.
Really?
Boston's lit, bro. That's some hating shit. I don't know.
It stresses me out too. Watching the social media, I get mental illness and uptight, and I got to turn it off because it's too much. We're seeing too much information. This is overload, you know. So they don't know how to turn it off.
So you think that's a disconnect between like your generation and this younger one? It's like it's social
Yes,
media.
because with the phones, because you can't. Oh, I'm sorry. With the phones, you can't monitor. I'm watching young kids, 4 and 5, on social media, and as they're scrolling, and I'm looking over, and I'm like, that's adult content. What are they watching? And then you wonder why they're mental and they go to school and they're frustrated and they want to, get a gun, and because you see so many, of the images with the gun and glorifying it,
Fortnite.
and they're not understanding. And then they're also showing some murders and things on social media. Are we veering off the subject?
Well, I'm actually very interested. Like you guys, like hearing that. Do you think like, well, you guys are Gen Z.
Talk about your generation,
dude. We're
tell me.
All of us as a whole.
Tell me about when did you get your first computer?
Conversation.
I think for us it's still
When did you get your first
shocking,
computer?
and we're just asking. Like we're also, because if we're like gonna have these discussions, we want to hear from you guys because we want to understand. Because I definitely don't watch any of their like murder videos. I watched one like 7 years ago, the little boy who's in the park, and I was like, oh my god, like I've never been so effed up in my life.
Yeah, 'cause once you see it, you can't.
I mean, just hearing it, every time you hear it, your heart like just drops to the ground, and you just like.
And then
for a lot of us, we cry and we're upset and we're trying to like. I don't watch the news.
I must be the off one because I watch murder documentaries. I watch.
Okay.
Well, I watch murder documentaries all day long.
First of all, women love murder documentaries.
They do. My girl falls asleep to
I
it.
even
like,
watch videos that
ASMR.
most people wouldn't be able to watch. Like maybe I'm the odd one.
Well, I watch all the stuff. I love Snap. I can name
One
them
second.
Yeah, I know.
You were just talking about like for Gen Y, we're like we're the middle of things. Like Gen X didn't grow up with technology. Like I'm sorry,
No, we did not.
you guys were like you guys are like literally cavemen.
I'm
sorry.
well, that's why it's crazy that like.
But we say Gen Y. We grew up when like all right when social media was getting developed. We grew up with we grew up with that happening. So we say like we feel like we know how to use social media responsibly because we saw when it was coming up. Gen Z, you guys.
Do you think we just grew up with iPads? Like, I know what a floppy disk looks like. Like, you feel me? Like
you could have been born and your mom made an Instagram page for you as a baby. That's very true.
No, that's like later on though. Like,
is it?
Yeah, of course. I was born in 1999. Like,
I used to have
AIM. Yeah, having AIM. Of course, I had an AIM.
Oh man.
Niggas had Windows 98, bro.
That's a fact.
I might be super wrong.
What are you talking about?
Before we had internet access, I was on Paint. I was playing Minesweeper. You know. So it's like we're just as.
Got you.
And that's why I am fortunate that like. We're kind of like at the beginning of the Gen Zers, I guess, because we still were a little bit disconnected. We obviously experienced the transition, and then later on in life, we're a lot more adapted to the technology. But I was still outside with my cousins. You know what I mean? We weren't all the way in tune. Like the problem that you said with 4 or 5 year olds like just consumed by TikTok. I have little sisters that that's their life. You know what I mean? They're already learning the dances. I'm a savage. And it's like, whoa, slow down. Like, you know.
Are you worried about them?
Am I worried about them?
That generation?
I don't know, because there was a lot of a lot of information I was open to too, and I think it's important to experience those things. I think you need to know when it's appropriate to share that information that you may know, or whatever the case is, or know that that's not appropriate in a certain time or place. But I mean, I seen a lot of things on the internet at an age I shouldn't, but I also knew, when the right time and place to, he knew.
Most of the kids don't know, but I don't know. But what I think is important for the parents as well to monitor their children. I see my son's Instagram page, and immediately he's like, all these profanity, and I'm like, remove it.
Remove it.
But even then, he removes it in the moment, but he'll go right back to it if he has access.
I mean, he'll remove it, and he'll be, Mom, give me your I need your tag. I need your tag. So I want him, and then I'll ask him, do you want to represent yourself like that? How do you want to represent? Because it's very important. And,
You have a burner account?
I was going to say something, but y'all have a whole other thing happening. So
No, say what you
I'll
have to
just
say.
say what?
Jump
We
in.
want to hear it.
I intend to, baby.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Spicy.
Unapologetic.
No, I'm honest. That's what happens with the boomer. We get honest. I will say to you that because I am a boomer and I am out of Cathedral Projects, I tell people I'm your worst nightmare. I'm a highly educated project girl. I speak both languages. Come here, come right. All right. I think that, and I've been listening to what all you all were saying about violence and coming up in my time during this, we didn't have as much violence. There were folks who hung out knives, a couple of guns. I had a gun pointed at me, but, that was few folks happening. But what we did have, and I don't see now, is since I'm out of the end of the civil rights movement and all of the Black Power movement, we had people trying to get together, create change. And I don't really see that now. We don't see the organizations. You're all trying to depend on social media, but that's controlled. Because you can get kicked out anytime they want to feel that your content ain't right. And that when they do that, that's controlling your stuff. You're being controlled by somebody who's making money off of your time on your phone. So I think that has an effect on what we're seeing now. They're showing us what they want us to see. You talked about music and violence. Music and violence sells, therefore you're going to hear it. Okay? Yeah. You talk about clothes and what they wear. Wearing somebody's label on your ass makes them money. And you make nothing from it. You get stuff from them, and it's overpriced. They paid $2 to make it. You pay $100 to buy it. Yeah. So don't get me started. You want what I want to say about it? That's how it flows.
Wait,
you got the
y'all
Ralph
Gen Z's
on.
gonna take that?
I'm not gonna.
Y'all have no sense of community?
Yeah.
What kind of hat is that?
You
said you got.
I'm sorry. You all are
You
wearing
got the
labels.
Boston Celtics joint. You
My
got the white
bad.
leprechaun on your head.
I didn't mean it was personal.
That's valid, though.
Yeah. I mean,
That's facts.
For me, I'm a full-time performer. I've been a full-time performer for 37
What's your art
years.
What's your art form?
My art forms?
Forms, my fault. Yeah, all
Correct
of it.
him. Correct him.
I walked in a couple of, you're a singer, right? Well, yeah, I do that. I have my own band. I'm also an actor. I write plays. I'm a professional storyteller. I teach art and performance art. At one point, I was the director of the Strand Teen Players.
That's fire.
So I do concerts. I'm also at Daryl's,
Yeah.
So I'm around. I do a lot of things. My first art form was theater. I was on the road for 8 years. Because you were talking about being on the road. 35 states, 200 cities.
Dang.
As I said, I just got through doing, the 9 days, 8 shows. A couple of storytelling, I did a couple of concerts. I did some theaters. I wrote a play. And here I sit now.
That's fire.
Okay. So it's possible, but that also gives me access to other things. I deal with musicians. My audience is a younger audience because I spit and I flow. And they're like, oh, you're okay, we can flow with what you're doing. So my audience is a younger audience. So with that saying, I deal with all ages. dealing with musicians, and that's a whole nother level. And we're talking about what's happening, yeah. But that's who I am.
That's
I'm
fine.
a Roxbury born in South End. South End was very poor then.
Yeah.
It was extremely poor. Now, I came back from college. I couldn't afford to live there. Yeah, I don't want to live there now. Yeah, so I see what you all are saying, and from my perspective, that's how I feel based on what I've learned.
That's real.
Okay.
I think like it's dope knowing that like there's like a history to it too. You know what I mean? Like, cause I'm from Roxbury also, so it's dope. You know what I mean? You got like Roxbury in the building. So I want to like, I guess like that's facts. I mean, of course we're here. Like that's what we're here. I think like it's a dope question. I wanted to ask just about like the history of like Boston and how you've seen Boston change from when you were growing up to what it is like now. Cause even what you were saying, JJ, it's like you were talking about how like you would come to Roxbury and you would just see black faces and it was like mesmerized. It was amazing, you know what I mean? And it's like I work in Roxbury, you feel me? And I'm from Roxbury and I don't see that as much now. There's still like majority black people, but we see there's something going on. There's you know what I mean? But yeah, so like what is it
coming
like
out
in
of
the
the
different
South
generations?
End? South End was extremely poor. Everybody was poor, but there were all different nationalities up in there. You know, cathedral projects of white folks and black folks. You know, Puerto Ricans first showed up there. You know, folks from all over, and it was good for me because when I went to college, it prepared me to go to college and be around white people. Yeah, because a lot of the brothers and sisters who went there at UMass Amherst did not know how to move around white people.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? You said the South End was like everyone's just living in harmony. There was no racism. Like it was just like nice.
You know,
I was asking. He was like,
no,
oh,
let me, no,
yeah, this and
I
that.
can speak on that. It really, everybody was poor as shit. I'm sorry.
Poverty do unite the masses.
Oh, sorry. No, everybody was poor, and you didn't see a lot of racism down there because it was a really mixed neighborhood. What I came back to, this stuff, is a whole nother level. But the South End was the only neighborhood there. All right, I'm a history freak too, so you know I write historical pieces. There were two neighborhoods that were like that. One was called the East End, and it was the same thing. It was multiracial, and it was very poor, and they erased the whole neighborhood to build Government Center, and that's what. So that left the South End mixed and poor. So it really wasn't that, you know, down there. I didn't see it, and I lived in the South End, but I went to school at St. Joseph's via 3 buses. There was no busing then. Look at you all. Look at the face.
But so are you saying that Boston is more racist now than it was when you were growing up?
No, I can't say that. I can't say that because
JJ's shaking his head.
I can't say that.
She's saying the South End.
No, when you're talking about Boston, I was going to say this. Boston was in neighborhoods, and I didn't go to the South End. I mean, I didn't go to South Boston. I was not safe there. You stayed where you were safe. Listen, at that time, you weren't safe, all that safe in Dorchester.
Yeah, facts.
Everybody had their own
community. You stay in your community.
Dorchester, you didn't go to South Dorchester.
See, you didn't go to South Dorchester.
No,
they're not from over here.
Boston, everybody had their own community.
Yeah, that's right.
And then there was like lines where it was, you know, where the Irish mixed with right along that line. It's like, it's okay there, you know?
Yeah.
But Boston was very, very segregated. And now it's really finally mixing with everybody.
Based on cash.
And that's basically because of the internet. The internet has brought everybody together kind of because they're looking on there and they're like, hey, black people ain't that bad. Hey, white people ain't that bad.
Yeah.
And as far as the white folks,
no.
All their heroes are black right now.
Okay.
Right. The younger generation, all the heroes are black, most of them, in everything.
All your heroes are black.
Just because they're fascinated by black people, don't mean they like black people. Or
No,
want to be around black people.
I didn't say they like them. I'm saying they're heroes. Like they're like, hey, I love Michael Jordan. He's different. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that like he's different from the black people.
But I was gonna
But
say,
I'm just saying.
like that in itself is a problem.
Okay,
though.
all right,
I'm sorry.
That's not solving any problem.
No. But that in itself is a problem because then we're like being put in these positions where we need to entertain, right? We're the entertainers of the world. So that in itself, I think, is an actual problem. But I did want to answer your question about Roxbury. Growing up in Roxbury, I came when I was in 1993. We were a black community. I learned how to speak Spanish because there were Puerto Rican kids, there were Dominican. There wasn't that many Dominican kids, but there were a lot of Puerto Rican kids. But now, like you said, we're coming together. I don't think we're coming together at all. Like, I live in Roxbury, and we're very upset. We're very annoyed. I don't want to be pushed out.
I am being pushed out.
I'm a social worker,
hold on,
and
yeah.
I don't want to be pushed out. And right now, in this moment in time, I want to focus on my business and I want to grow my play company. But it's almost impossible because it means I have to be pushed out because these white folks are so inconsiderate in the way that they move into our communities, the way that they build, that the way that they are just invading. Like, I was at a dinner party where this white man, he wanted to make his point, which I appreciated because he said, he moved into this neighborhood, and when he looked at this parking lot, he's like, oh, they probably have parties over there every other weekend. And he's like, and when I moved in, they have parties every other weekend. And he's like, and guess what? I won't dare call the cops because it's not my neighborhood, it's not my culture. I don't even know why the hell they're having a party. And the other lady, she looked at him like he had 20 heads.
Where do you
and
live?
I live in Roxbury, but she wanted to start a whole. I'm by like Humboldt. I'm by the area where they're trying to kick us out to Dorchester because
I'm on
we
Copeland.
ain't good enough no more.
But hold on a minute. I told him I was going to
I
give
was
him.
in that pink house where like Ruth was and her family was.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I'm like 2 doors down.
That's fine.
But I'm moving out.
The
rent. The rent.
I know it's a force. Yeah.
$4,000.
Yeah, it's killing.
I'm sorry about that.
I laugh because people call me a cultural icon. I mean, y'all don't know, and the folks know me. And I laugh because you call me a cultural icon,